David Liggett with Data Center Hawk. Focus on cloud and co-location, data center industry trends, and dynamic market. Well, I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk, and I am so excited to be joined by Flexential's CEO, Chris Downey. Chris, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. You've been a regular on Hawk Talks before, but it's been a while, so we're excited to reconnect with you.
Yeah, great to be here, David, and thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Of course, and I think the last time we were together physically was in Denver, and that is the one time, if you didn't watch our video there, that you actually threw me a rugby ball out on the data center floor at your Compark facility, which is a great memory. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I got it. Whoops, wrong way. Got it up on the shelf here. So no, definitely remember that. And the good news is we couldn't do that today because that floor is all filled up, and
sure.
And obviously appreciating the growth that many of us have experienced over the last year.
Yeah, well, no surprise. I mean, Flexential has, it seems like continuing to grow, continuing to expand. I'd love to just get a quick update just from, again, the mindset of a leader and the CEO of Flexential. What's it been like to be, in this time period and leading in the midst of, one of the most probably challenging times that the world has ever seen?
Yeah, I think I've used the word challenging probably more times than I'll ever use it again over the course of the last year. But obviously a difficult year for everyone, and not one anybody expected. But I was very proud of our team, quite frankly, and the ability to quickly assess and react and adapt to what we all refer to as the new normal that we've all been living through. But I think we've been fortunate, and I think the data center business has been fortunate because it's been built to be resilient, not only in physical stature, but also in really the processes that enable the environments to weather a pandemic to the storms that we've unfortunately experienced in the Southwest over the course of the last over this winter. So, I for my part, obviously appreciated that kind of just the growth agenda was going to be challenged. So how do we ensure that we're advancing what I refer to as our strategic agenda? This isn't Flexential's journey isn't about just 1 year. It's about a very long future, and ultimately, I like to think that Flexential, as a business, was really just created 4 years ago, and so we're kind of 4 years old in our journey, and we have a lot to do to just improve upon our value proposition and our strategic position in the market, and that that involves everything from our people to our facilities to being able to get through difficult times like we've all experienced over the last year. So I'm certainly would have rather it didn't happen, but very, very pleased with where Flexential's coming out as we enter the new year, which is moving fast.
Yeah, it sure is. And you mentioned being 4 years old. One of the things that I remember when Flexential was formed, when BioWest and Peak 10 came together, there's probably never a more complementary, from just a physical location side of things, two companies merging together to form a U.S. portfolio that puts you in markets all across the country. And one of the biggest markets that you're in is in Dallas, and it's actually where we at Data Center Hawk sit. But I know it's a very strategic market for the company. The company has shown continual growth here, and so I'd love to hear your perspective on the Dallas market and why you all have seen your customers find this market attractive for their IT infrastructure.
Yeah, sure. And I guess maybe just first on the platform, in many ways, the new Flexential geographic reach just gave us the opportunity to be, more relevant in some of the consumption sets, which are just sort of natural by nature. Obviously the massive technology players are deploying, all across the country. So if you're kind of compartmentalized in a certain region, you may not necessarily be on that on that list, if you will. So the reach of the new platform, has enabled us to engage in all kinds of demand sets, which is relevant to Dallas. Obviously Dallas has been a destination market for enterprises and large use cases for decade and a half, if not longer, at this juncture. And so we've been fortunate to participate in that. And over the last 15 years and in this life and prior lives, it was always is Dallas oversupplied, and is it going to lead to price compression and all those kinds of things. And and I've seen and that's always a measurement of a given quarter. But then and in all the years that I've been in this business, the Dallas supply gets consumed, and I think we're seeing a continuation of that. I think there's clearly been a change in, I'd say, product profile, I'd call it, in Dallas, in terms of what's being built, because some folks in the industry are solving for the very large hyperscale multi-megawatt deployments, and that just by its very nature drives to a price that would be from a comparison to history be considered compressed. But there's still a significant amount of enterprise, I'd say large retail and medium retail, if you will, that's going on in the market every month, every quarter of every year, and thankfully that's remained consistently strong. But it's not necessarily the activity that grabs the the headlights of some of the bigger deployments. But we feel that we're uniquely positioned in the market. We really have three presences in the market in the Infomart, in Richardson, Texas, and in Plano, Texas. And so each one of those environments gives us the ability to solve for a different tier of scale and of use case. Clearly the Infomart brings a connectivity dynamic to the Dallas, to the Dallas market, yes, and then to our portfolio at large, that's fairly significant. But the Richardson was was built before our Plano facility, and it's got several hundred customers in it. And as you well know, a lot of the growth comes from your existing base in this business, assuming you're doing it well. And then Plano was built really to capture growth from those customers, but ultimately larger use cases, because it's essentially, if you remember our Denver facility, it's essentially the same size. And what we're developing is, there was that big open white floor that we threw the rugby ball around in, and that's essentially what we're going to be delivering later this year. So we're excited about that. Clearly, the Dallas as a market has got inexpensive land and power, and there are tax benefits as well that are business friendly, which really has driven large scale enterprise into the market, as well as from outside the market as well. And Dallas is kind of very well situated in the really from a network density perspective, from the southern east-west fiber path and connectivity into Mexico. So things tend to continue to concentrate and gravitate to Dallas within the Texas marketplace. And so we have we're very optimistic about continued.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the three facilities or three areas that Flexential has a presence in, and it's just interesting the mindset around how the evolution around how those have been built. If you think about the Infomart, and those that are watching this that might not be familiar with Dallas, the Infomart is the Carrier Hotel, so that's where all the connectivity takes place. And so you as a provider in this market, you want to have a presence there for customers that need that. And then I think about your Richardson facility and when that was built and how that solved the need that it did, but obviously different than the Infomart. And then, the building in Plano is obviously the newest evolution of design that Flexential has, and similar to areas, I think, like Denver you mentioned, and maybe even maybe your Portland 2 facility, and so it's been interesting to watch the change in design take place for, users across the market, but obviously specifically here in Dallas. Talk about, you'll have a very rich customer base here in Dallas. Talk about some of the types of companies. Is it technology companies? Is it insurance companies? Is it financial companies that fit that enterprise, user base that you all have the ability to attract?
Yeah, so I'd say it's all the above. The verticals that you mentioned are obviously the ones that have been, I'd say, early and long tenured consumers of what we deliver. And so within the Dallas marketplace, we really have all of those types of customers. And so and we continue to see unfortunately, it's always a bit of a trick as to what customers you can ultimately talk about specifically. Sure. But we as we went through the unfortunate experience recently with the weather in Dallas, there was one of our customers there, AutoNation, was vocal about us in particular stepping up and ensuring the integrity of their environment in a very difficult time, so they could focus on what they were doing. We have a large national retail provider, a number of financial institutions that are in there. So it's not terribly different than, I'd say, the base across the country, although clearly, as I mentioned before, Dallas has been a destination market and for data center consumers for some time, so both in market and out of market.
How do those companies that are in those verticals, obviously they need the physical infrastructure, the power, the space, the cooling that Flexential provides. But then there's also, additional services that companies like that traditionally have. How have you seen maybe the increase or decrease of those needs take place over the last year? I'm sure that COVID had an impact on, that those companies would need additional services from data center operators, given, some of the challenging times they experienced. But what's that been like from your perspective?
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up, because it's very much, what we're focused on in 2021, because as we went through 2020, we saw more consumption of I'd say a hybrid product set by the single buyer in the enterprise. And what I mean by that is, I think obviously cloud has been a phenomenon within our industry, but it's not necessarily terrible. It's not really mature as in the grand scheme of things. It's only been around for whatever it is, 5 to 7 years. And the way that I've seen it evolve is that there was typically a buyer within the enterprise that procured colo, and then there was a buyer that procured cloud, and they weren't necessarily tightly aligned. And obviously, as the consumption of cloud has increased, it's become a real cost center within the enterprise, and that's definitely raised the attention that needs to be aligned. And so that, I think that's basically led to that there being a single buyer within the enterprise, but it hasn't necessarily done anything relative to the need for those virtualized resources, because they are obviously, given what happened last year, and what's obviously expected to. As we look forward, those virtualized resources are becoming increasingly important. So as we look at our hybrid capability set of being able to deliver, colo, network, private cloud, access to public cloud, data protection as a service, really a bunch of storage options as a service, and professional services, that gives that single buyer the ability to come to one place instead of having to procure from 3 different places. So I think as we march into the new year, what our hybrid focus, our hybrid agenda, we view as being just increasingly more relevant to consumption sets, and we have that enabled across the platform. We have a number of private cloud clients in our Richardson and Plano facilities. Obviously, the Infomotors has a different specialized use case, but we can deliver that same product set the same way in all of our markets across the country.
And one of the things we've also seen with IT infrastructure deployment size has been, an increase in maybe some of the, network nodes or just bigger like production areas for maybe the enterprise or hyperscale users that might have a 1 or 2 megawatt need in certain markets, or maybe even larger, that doesn't fit the 20, 30, 40 megawatt size, but is in that 1 to 4 megawatt range. And I kind of think about your Plano facility, as like right down the fairway for something like that. And I want to highlight certainly what you're doing in Plano, the expansion that you have undergone there, because it's really big. And, I think, I don't know if there's another, single area of white floor space that might reach that size in Texas or in Dallas. It's not demised. And that's, again, just off the top of my head. But talk about just what you're doing in Plano and how that allows you to serve both the hybrid users that you just spoke about and some of the bigger requirements that are in the market as well.
Sure. Well, it is a kind of a big white campus, so we can be pretty flexible for really how we meet the demand sets. Obviously, as you fill up a multi-tenant environment, that becomes just a little more requires more coordination. But glad to be able to have that inventory in that format relatively soon. But to your point, we actually did see a fair amount of activity from the hyperscalers for their what I refer to as their more regional, if not localized, compute nodes that aren't the the big massive facilities that reside in really the kind of the major data center markets like Ashburn and so on. But there was a lot of half a megawatt to 2 megawatt activity, or let's say a half a megawatt that has the ability to grow to 2 megawatt that were being deployed in multiple of our markets. And I think you saw that from a number of the industry participants. So great to see that, because I think that just means that these markets are just as important to that that hyperscale growth. It's just of a different scale. And so our ability to have larger environments that manage to those and are flexible to manage to those, because they obviously aren't quite sure exactly how hyper their scale is going to be, so we definitely have the scale of inventory to support that. I think it's also with those deployments, network is really key, and they typically kind of know exactly where they have enough of the network resource that they need to make that node as impactful as they want it to be. And so Richards is an example. It's been a significant data center in the market for quite some time, and as a result has fairly significant carrier density built into it, and one of those hyperscale use cases deployed in that facility. And so, and it was also interesting to see that just continued in 2020. So they obviously, given some of the demands on their businesses, really couldn't slow down. So it was we were pretty psyched to see that happen, not only in Dallas but in multiple other markets.
Yeah, for those that maybe are joining the industry or don't or maybe on the fringes, why has the network become so much more important? We certainly have seen the value and how large companies with large data center needs and even like enterprise users really continue to place increased value in the network. But just talk about, as a leader of the company, why you have seen these companies and your customers value that more and more over time.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's seeing things all around them get digitized, over the course of the last, 5 years. And ultimately, people are expecting what used to be delivered, more in a physical format to be delivered in a virtualized format through, not sure where my phone is, but, through a phone that, quite frankly, can be, or a device. I probably shouldn't call it a phone. That can be, basically you can be anywhere and expect the same, delivery of that data, be it a picture, business performance information, what have you. And so, the network is the enabler of that wherever wherever that the kind of the data resides. That's the delivery mechanism. And I think, the phenomenon of just so much data being created and the need for it again to be more geographically distributed than it ever had in the past, I think has also led to just a kind of a flywheel effect, more data is generated and is created as a result. So it's not just legacy data. So, and I think, it's interesting that, the network is such a critical resource, but I think it's still somewhat underappreciated by the end consumer, not necessarily the enterprise, but the enterprise's customers. Kind of all expect these things to bring us anything we want at any point in time. But the network, I think, still there's still more awareness of the network as a resource. Everybody understands power pretty clearly, but I'd say network is really just as important, if not, well, I wouldn't say just as important as power.
Sure. Well, talk about 2021 and just your vision for Flexential and the future for the company and where you think you'll go.
Yeah, so as we come out of 2020, as we talked about, a difficult year, but I feel, every year we just become stronger as a company and stronger in our ability to deliver, a high quality value proposition to our customers. And so as we walk into 2021, clearly without the challenge of 2020, although we were still dealing with things a bit, that we expected to be a pretty exciting year. And I think you've seen that in terms of kind of forecast discussions from some of of the public industry participants that people are expecting kind of the enterprise demand sets, which seized fairly materially, at least in the beginning of 2020, to kind of come back because those requirements really haven't gone away. And so a lot of the things that we were able to accomplish in 2020, I think, position us well. So you may have seen our announcement of our Hillsboro 3 facility, and so I just was watching the live stream of that, and walls are going up, and so that'll be turning on in the late in the second quarter, and so and that's our biggest data center ever. So in terms of just continuing to drive the scale of this platform and its relevancy for national use cases, we just kind of keep moving along there. And the Plano expansion, the Dallas expansion is very much for the same reasons. And so Atlanta, which has obviously been a good data center market. So we're expanding kind of the critical resource where it makes the most sense. We're very focused in 2021 on I'd say continuing to drive the evolution of the customer experience. And so through the integration time period, which I'm glad is very much in the rearview mirror for us, we put in some big enabling systems and Salesforce and ServiceNow and NetSuite, and now we want to be able to bring that capability to enable our customer experience. And so Portal, which we have today, but we're going to focus fairly significantly on evolving our Portal to be something that's a differentiator for our existing customers in particular, but also for prospect customers as well. And then just making sure that we've got automation built into the network platform. So we have we think a fairly unique resource in that our Flex Anywhere network is architected in scale. It connects all of our facilities together, connects into 16 carrier hotels, and we just want to make it easier to consume. So because a lot of those, whether they're in our environment or in a carrier hotel, there's access to cloud, on ramps and all the cloud on ramps, if you will, or the cloud player on ramps. But So we just, network automation is a key focus for us, so that can be consumed as instantaneously as possible. So those are kind of key areas for us. And then just continuing to drive, the awareness of who we are and what we value and what we deliver to our customers, and just continue to grow, grow our existing and our hopefully new prospect base as well.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and connect. It's been really exciting to watch Flexential's growth. And, you mentioned the Hillsboro site, and I just think about, how the evolution, not only, and I think if you even just look at your facilities, it just shows the value of the flexibility and being able to attract certain types of customers. Not just with, buildings and facilities and redundancy, but with services and with, culture and with service. And so, congratulations on the past 4 years, and I'm excited to see the years moving forward.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and we're pretty bullish on the future, and I'm excited about what we're focused on for 2021. So certainly wish you and your team a strong year as well.
You bet. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Dave.